Hello, slot car fans. Hope everybody's having a decent evening or day or whatever time it is when you're watching this. And if you're not, hopefully you have something to take your mind off of it, right? Today I wanted to talk a little bit about some things. I'm going to kind of follow up on some previous videos and do a precursor to some upcoming videos all in one, I guess, dealing with the camera car situation for running a first-person view type or point of view type camera situation on your slot cars. 132, 124s, I guess, are basically what we're talking about here. Probably not going to do it on anything smaller than that, or at least I don't think so. If somebody's doing it, let me know. I'd love to see it. But here, one thing I mentioned to you guys in a previous video discussing, let's remove this. This is actually kind of a joke. Nobody's going to do anything like this. If you do, it's not going to work very well. But in a previous video about this Scale Auto chassis, I mentioned that because it has such strong magnets between these two magnets here and the little bit of extra magnet you probably get from that motor, that these things really stick to the Carrera track. And I actually showed in one of my videos how it'll pick up a piece of track. I didn't show a comparison to a Carrera car. I guess I could do that today, but maybe that's something saved for another day. But the end result is, you just guys have to trust me, there's plenty of magnet power in these Scale Auto cars. And so at that time I mentioned that this might be a really good choice to use for a camera car, because having all that magnet holding it down would help offset the extra weight of your camera and keep it from flopping off the track quite as much, hopefully. Well, I did try this car on my track. I swapped things over to analog because that's an analog car at the moment. It's just the standard Scale Auto chassis with a Lexan body, a nice lightweight Lexan body on it. And I ran this car on the track. It's a 124 scale car, and if you guys are familiar with my track, it's real twisty, and it's the twin carousel of chaos, and I've got no borders anywhere. So I basically just had the catch fences right up against the edge. And I guess I should have uncovered the track so I could show you, but there's plenty of videos out there you guys can see of it. The end result is I don't have any borders anywhere. I just have catch fences right up against the edge in a lot of instances. And this car worked it pretty well, despite the fact that, the Carrera, all the information about Carrera, if you're running a 124 scale car. Now this is 124, not 132. This is 124 car. That when you run a 124 on the Carrera track, you really need to have the full borders and everything. And I can't disagree with them at all, because this thing was scraping and bumping and grinding all the way around. But I'll tell you what, it actually ran some pretty good laps, because the way it was operating, it was just enough to kind of, this little bit of extra pressure from the body when it would duck up against things was just enough to kind of brush it along and keep it going. So it didn't de-slot all that much. It just kind of stuck and hung in there. It was actually pretty cool. So I did like that aspect of it. But back to that camera car subject. So without the body on it, though, and just running the chassis, that way I could mount the camera down real low. It's kind of a pain in the butt to Velcro this body on here and get it all at the right height and everything, so I'm not going to take this body off to show you, but you guys can picture it. If you were to mount this down on the chassis, it'd be down about this low from what I've showed you in some of the previous videos, but you'd have to have no body to do it. Well, when I tried running this chassis without a body on it, it didn't work worth a damn on my track. Now, I'll qualify that by saying it might work really well on some of these tracks that has plenty of borders, wherever they need them, and catch fences that aren't just right up against the edge like mine are. But without the borders, somehow little corners of the car, I guess it's mostly these front wheels. I think these front wheels just ended up catching on the corners of the catch fence, and the car would just come to a complete stop, and that was basically the end of your run. So, my idea of using this chassis without a body as a camera car is going to be postponed for a while, till we figure something else out for that. But I have been experimenting with using the Carrera chassis with this GoPro, which is totally unsuitable, but it strangely enough kind of works. And I really didn't expect it to work as well as it did, to be honest with you, and I'll show you a few reasons why. First of all, this is a GoPro 7. It's just basically your typical, there we go, can we see it? Yeah, it's just your typical GoPro 7. And I think they're all about the same size and weight, whether you have a 5 or a 7 or whatever the newest number is, I don't know. But it's just you know, one of these little cameras. And oh, hang on, let me back up just a minute. Just for grams, let's get a baseline weight. I was going to show some weights of this stuff, so let's get a baseline weight. Now, that's a 124 scale car. Whoops, I guess you didn't see what I was doing there. Let me back out. I put the Scale Auto chassis up on this scale here. And, oh boy, I really need to back up. Okay, give me just a moment. Let's take this off first of all, so you can see that we are pretty well centered. All right, let's zoom in a bit. Okay, so you can see that we're pretty much on 0 here. And this scale, I probably would have had to work really hard to find a crappier, junkier scale than this one, but there just happened to be this laying around the house, so this is what we're using. Alright, but you can see what we've got here. The outside ring is measuring in ounces, and the first big tick there is 4, and then you've got 8 and 12, and then the 1 pound. And you can see the inner ring there is in grams for you folks that actually use the metric system. Congratulations, wish we did. But here we go. I'm going to show you the weight of these cars and different components so you can see a couple of different things. Well, doggone it. There we go. So I put the car on the scale. This is the Scale Auto car with the Lexan body. And what does that look like right there? It looks like about 5 ounces. I'm going to call that 5 ounces. That's for the whole car. That's a 1/24 scale car with a Lexan body, though, not a hard plastic body. All right. Now let's check out a Carrera car. Now, this is the chassis with a tiny little bit of extra tape and no screws. I left the screws out because I didn't want to have it fall over and lose the screws. But let's see what we're getting here. This is the Carrera. It's the BMW M6. This is what I ended up using as a camera car. Son of a gun. Looks like the same 5. Looks like about the same 5 ounces. And this is a 132 scale car, not a 124. So this is a considerably smaller car. But now when it comes to the camera thing, here's where it gets really wild. Watch what happens here. And this is why I was saying these GoPros would never be all that good to use for this application, and I still stand by that. I think there's got to be better cameras out there. They're just expensive. It's over 5 ounces. So this camera weighs almost as much as the car does by itself. And now we're going to mount this camera to the car and try to drive it around. You know that's not going to be ever, working as good as you hope it would. So what I ended up doing, since I had taken this body off, I took off the body from this M6 here because it needs some body work. The rear end's been busted a few times and I need to glue these parts all back in again. And so I took it apart, and while I was looking at it, I said, man, I'm going to have to just go ahead and give this a try, right? And you can see this is my tape job here. And this is all I ended up doing. And let me see if I can get this into the camera where I can show you and see what I'm showing you at the same time. Okay. So basically what I did is I kind of stuffed these little connectors down into the center section here. So they made sort of a platform a little bit. Same with this one over here. And you'll see on this chip there is a resistor sticking up, or I'm sorry, I think it's a capacitor that is kind of sticking up high right here. So that gives you sort of like a third leg to your 3-legged stool. You've got this screw right here that sticks up that holds the magnet in. Then you've got this capacitor here, and then we've got these other connectors all kind of stuffed down here to give me the third leg out of this stool. And then I just set the camera. I hope you can see this because I can't see what I'm seeing in the camera anymore. I basically just set the camera right there, kind of tried to position it how I wanted it, and then I used this strapping tape. It's just that fibrous strapping tape that has the strings in it. You can get it anywhere, I think. Tried to position it so that the camera was not all the way back against the shaft of the motor, because obviously that wouldn't be real good. But I did want it to be as squared up as I could. And you can see how I'm just kind of holding it here, so it's not perfect, but you can see how just by stuffing the cables in there and using the connectors kind of as footings, you can almost square this thing up perfectly. And if you just adjust it a little bit as you're taping it, you can get it just the way you want it. And basically all I did was cut these pieces of tape and just pull them around. One piece of tape there and another piece of tape here. Now this is the used tape, so it's not going to hold right, but you get the idea. I just brought these two pieces around and stuck them on there like that. And you wouldn't believe how well it held. I've got a bunch of videos coming up showing me running around with this rig. Well, you don't actually see this rig because you're seeing it from the point of view of this rig. But I'm running with a bunch of other cars, and it gets banged around a bit, and I do crash because it is top heavy, and it's pretty easy to overdrive the corner with it. But the good news about this thing, and the thing that I guess has gotten me the most excited about this, is as a general rule, if you're running with your ghost cars, it's difficult to really have a good race because your ghost cars, you know, you can only really set them at the speed of your slowest corner. So you're always trying to either run your fastest car as a ghost car and then take your slowest car and race against it or something like that to try to figure out a way to get some kind of competition. Well, you put the camera on this car and it makes it a little bit harder to drive and a little bit slower around the track. Now it becomes a pretty good race for your ghost cars. So far I've been able to beat them, or at least beat them to the next corner when I crash. But yeah, I think I can be pretty competitive with the ghosts running this camera on it. So it's going to make for some really cool footage. And as you guys can guess, there is going to be a get to work on time point of view video coming up at some point. I haven't done it yet, but I've got some little trial videos I'll be publishing to show you where we're going with this coming up pretty soon. And when I get all my ghosts set up again and get some more mods done on the track, I really need to try to reduce some of the elevation or the extreme elevation changes. I want to make it more gradual from the bottom to the top now. I had to alter some of that stuff pretty extreme that you'll notice on some of these videos. I had to really alter the angle of the top track, and it's not as good as it could be. So we're going to fix all that stuff up, and we got some cool videos on the way. One thing I did want to add is that if you're going to spend fresh money on a camera for this particular job, then buying one of these GoPros of this size is probably not the way to go. That's one of the things I was kind of trying to show you with the measurements and all in this video, is that you know, it weighs too much and it's too big. And they make cameras that are smaller now that'll run around the same resolution that don't cost a whole lot more than this if you're going out and spending fresh money on it. But in my case, I already had this, so that's why we're using it. But I hope at some point maybe I can find the right camera, maybe at a decent price used or something like that, because I don't want to spend the crazy money it's going to cost to buy one of them new again. But you know, maybe somebody else will. Maybe one of you guys will, and you'll get you guys to spend fresh new money. You might as well buy one of those little cameras, and you'll be able to do some kick-ass videos that I can watch. So thanks again for watching. Hope everybody enjoyed it. Catch you next time.